The treacherous rapids of Turnback Canyon on the remote and wild Alsek River in northern Canada is considered the Mount Everest by whitewater aficionados. To descend the mighty Alsek River, we first drove from Haines, Alaska to Haines Junction in the Yukon, and then started rafting until Turnback Canyon, where we made a helicopter portage and then recommenced rafting through British Columbia down to Dry Bay in Alaska. Finally arriving at the Tweedsmuir Glacier, we set up camp opposite its huge terminal moraine. Opposite our camp was a fascinating stream flowing out from under the Tweedsmuir Glacier. We emptied out the rafts and then carried them ashore so that they could be deflated and folded up in preparation for the upcoming helicopter portage around Turnback Canyon, which is impassable to rafts.
Yeah, work it, huh?
Does this replace the yoga?
At this campsite, due to the presence of bears, we set up the portable electric bear fence to discourage bears from getting into the food. Having set up my tent, I lay down inside for a rest when I heard people yelling to get out. Rapidly exiting the tent, I looked up to see rocks raining down a short distance away. It was impressive to see the force at which the falling rocks hit at the base of the cliff. The rockfall continued for several minutes, after which it was evident that a couple of tents, including mine, would have to be moved to be safely away from the line of rockfall. Fortunately, the tents could be picked up and moved without needing to be disassembled. Rockfall continued sporadically throughout our stay at the campsite. The danger was not only from a direct hit by a falling rock, but also from shrapnel when falling rocks hit other rocks and explode.
Oh, here comes a big one.
Later when we went hiking, we had to go through the rockfall zone, so got a chance to see an impressive collection of fallen rock. The brief northern summer proffered a profusion of small flowers. High up on the mountain ridge overlooking our camp, we could see a mountain goat feeding on the bushes. As it was just after 10 p.m., the low-level lighting made for very grainy video. Around our camp was evidence of bears in the form of scat and tracks, while high up on the mountain ridge overlooking our camp we could see a brown bear feeding on the vegetation. Mount Blackadar was first named after Walter Blackadar, who first ran Turnback Canyon solo in 1971. At the mountain base is a memorial paddle to Blackadar with a now faded Sharpie inscription and signatures. The Tweedsmuir Glacier is 70 kilometers long and about a kilometer wide, except at its terminus where it expands to some 10 kilometers wide. Like the Lowell Glacier, the Tweedsmuir is a glacier that periodically surges across the Alsek River, blocking it. We hiked downstream to see the entrance to the fabled Turnback Canyon that is called the Pearly Gates. Along the way, we hiked past a series of different colored lakes and a variety of flowers whilst watching the frequent rockfall. From the ridgetop, we had a good view out over the Tweedsmuir Glacier as it emerges out of the St. Elias Mountains. Turnback Canyon begins upstream at the so-called Pearly Gates. It is the natural pinch point on the Alsek River that forces rafting groups to either portage for 2 days by walking over the Tweedsmuir Glacier or to get a lift over it by a helicopter. The current is so strong in the 15-kilometer gorge that biologists noticed that migrating salmons advance no further than the downstream end of the canyon. As the sun sank behind the mountains at 9 p.m., the last rays of sunlight bathed the campsite in a beautiful warm light. With the sun down, the moon was visible over the St. Elias Mountains across the river. Unfortunately, even late at night it was too bright to see the northern light displays. After the layover day, it was time for the exciting helicopter portage around Turnback Canyon to where our descent of the Alsek would continue. The Bell Long Ranger helicopter arrived right on time at 9 a.m. from its base 190 kilometers away at Whitehorse in the Yukon. Unfortunately, the dust and grit thrown up by the helicopter whilst landing temporarily disabled both of my cameras. Critically, the helicopter pilot brought a much-needed emergency resupply of toilet paper to see us through the remainder of our trip. After landing, the helicopter pilot had the loads rearranged and then rapidly set about making 5 shuttle flights over Turnback Canyon. The first flight was to ferry a load of people who had received the following 3 slung loads of cargo. The final flight would take the remaining people across the portage.
Uh-oh. Is that good? The Bell Long Ranger can carry 6 passengers or a 560-kilogram external load. These sling loads were rapidly attached and the helicopter departed in short order. With all the cargo across the portage, the helicopter returned for the final time to ferry the remaining people across Turnback Canyon. Finally, after the third and final cargo flight, it was time for the fifth and final flight, which would take the remaining passengers on an exciting flight along Turnback Canyon to where we'd rejoin our raft and gear.
The half-mile wide Alsek River funnels into Turnback Canyon, so the current accelerates as the river course ultimately narrows down to a section only some 30 feet or 10 meters wide, bank to bank. Only a small number of people have taken a kayak through the canyon that some call the Mount Everest of the whitewater world.
Flying over the canyon during our portage, we could clearly see that it would be suicidal to try and take a raft through the narrow canyon containing the raging currents of the Alsek River. Despite the hazards of this 4-mile-long Class 5+ section of wild water, Walter Blackadar made the first kayak descent of Turnback Canyon solo on August 25, 1971.
Having successfully passed through Turnback Canyon, Walt Blackadar had barely reached the shore when he wrote in his diary,
"One huge horrendous mile of hair, 30 feet wide, 50,000 cubic feet per second, and a 20-degree downgrade going like hell. Incredible. I did not flip in that mile, or I would not be writing. I'll never go back. Not for $50,000. Not for all the tea in China. Heed my words well and do not be an ass. It's unpaddleable."
At the end of the helicopter portage, we landed just past the vast terminal moraine of the Tweedsmuir Glacier on the banks of the Alsek River, and the helicopter departed directly to make its return to its base in Whitehorse. Soon after the helicopter's departure at the end of the portage, the rafts were reassembled and put back into the Alsek River. We then proceeded to hike to see the huge terminal moraine of the Tweedsmuir Glacier. It was impressive to see the meltwater boiling up into the Alsek River from under the terminal moraine.
The exciting helicopter portage around Turnback Canyon made the wonderful rafting trip down the wild Alsek River even more memorable. If you enjoyed this film, please subscribe and like. There are many more similar films available on my channel.